I'm only a child, I stutter, I'm not gifted in this or that. It's always the excuse, isn't it? We have this Jeremiah verse again, and as a child, he's talking to God and saying that it's not worthy. He's not worthy to be part of this whole God thing. He's new to life in general, doesn't have many experiences, so what does he have to offer? Well, God uses him anyway and says, don't worry about it. He tells Moses, don't worry about it. He tells other people in the Bible, don't worry about it. I will be with you. I'll give you the words you need, the strength you need to do what we need to do. But I'm only human. Well, that's a double-edged sword. Sometimes that's an excuse not to do anything, and sometimes it's reality. We are only human. But after all, Jesus became human himself to be with us. So there's something special about that, too. That we have a special place in God's heart to care not only for each other, but to care for the earth, the animals, the trees, whatever it is. I remember seeing this movie. It's Star Wars. And this whole planet was just all a city. And I came to think about it. There's no vegetation, there's no wildlife, there's nothing there except technology and a city. How does that work? How do you survive in an environment like that? Do you manufacture air somehow? Do you manufacture food somehow that you don't need plants, or how does it all work? I don't get it. Do you import it from another planet? We're only human. We're only human. And we think about that too. When we can identify with these people in the synagogue, your beloved son comes back, and he's teaching and he's preaching, and yet he's not doing anything in your town that he did in the neighboring town or city. He did all kinds of cool things there, but he's not doing a thing here. What's with that? Why don't you do the same things here that you did in the other places? First of all, they looked at Jesus as a healer, not quite grasping the extent of his identity as Son of God, as the Messiah. They're not quite there yet. Well, it's pretty early in his ministry, and no one has it quite yet. Not even his disciples who follow him from day to day and have seen some things. They don't still get it. And the people, well, they're just like us. They're only human. They have these emotions, these expectations that we all have, whether we like it or not. But Jesus is seen as the healer. And you darn well better heal your family first. Right here is where the need is. You stay right here. They can do their own thing. Or when you're all done here, then you can go into the other places. The problem is it's never done here. There's always something going on. And you can't hold Jesus back because he's got a mission. It's not just to his hometown. As a matter of fact, it's not just for the Israelites, we find out later. He goes to the Gentiles. He's making exceptions about Naaman, the Syrian. He wasn't an Israelite. This woman who Elijah helped, she wasn't Israelite. What's going on with that? Should be us first, right? And then there's always going to be something going on here. And so Jesus makes his way to the next town where they don't know him and they just can figure out for themselves who he is and what he does. Jesus doesn't stay too long, as we see, though. He does his thing and gets a little spark going, a little seed going, gets people talking a bit, and then he moves on to the next town, the next village, the next city. And it takes him a while. He's walking. And along the way, he's taking a break. He's resting. He's praying. He's doing whatever he needs to do. But back to the people. We can identify with that. Sometimes we can say that we can identify with the Israelites saying, God chose us. God chose us. We are God's chosen people. He took us out of Egypt and in 40 years in the desert, and he brought us to the promised land. We are God's people. That's our entitlement. I'll never forget, God is my God right here in my pocket. And unfortunately, sometimes Christians do the same thing. Well, those Jews, they had their chance, but they didn't accept Jesus as their Messiah, so God had to turn somewhere else, didn't he? So now, we are the chosen people. And God better stick with us, because we have God in our pockets now. And if he goes to the Muslims, if he goes to the Arab, if he goes anywhere else, that's a problem. Because he's our God. And there are actually some people that think about this and believe this and say, this is our God, let's put him in our pocket and put him in a box and we'll just contain him. It's like that show Royal Pains. It's on Netflix. It's also, I don't know what during the week, Hank Med, right? It's a young doctor, emergency doctor. He makes a wrong diagnosis, so he does something wrong. He gets kicked out of the hospitals in New York City, and he can't practice anywhere, and finally goes out to the Hamptons, Long Island, just for a vacation. And then he happens to see someone who is really injured and suffering and near death, and he helps her. And pretty soon, the richest guy on the island says, I want you to be our concierge doctor and just be at our beck and call. Well, Hank is more independent than that. Said, I'm not going to do that. You just can't do this for me. I will help, but I'm not in anybody's pocket. You can't buy me. But he's basically for the people. It's called Royal Pains. And two Royal Pains, you'll get it. Anyway, so he's not going to be contained, but he helps people in this area. And we ask Jesus to do the same thing. We want Jesus, the concierge Jesus, a concierge God for us. And help us first, because those people can wait. For how long? How long do they have to suffer? How long do they have to be oppressed? How long do they have to be at war? How long do they have to be starving before we make a move to help? And God is saying, well, I can be your God, but you need to help me out. I can't do this all on my own. Well, he could, but he uses people to get things done. Not only for his sake, but for our sake. There's a lot of growing in that. If we take a step out of the boat, right? Get out of the boat, like Peter did. Start walking on the water a bit. Take a chance, go past your boundaries, and then you'll continue to grow in your faith and your love for not only God, but for people. You begin to understand people not like us. You begin to understand that God's people are not always the same. Maybe we have cultural differences, big cultural differences. In social work in Chicago, what do you call spanking? It's corporal punishment. That's okay because it's the culture of the people. That's different than what I was brought up with. But, let me think about that for a while. I don't understand that, but if it's a cultural thing, then maybe I need to open my ears and eyes and understand what's going on. It's always different, and we never have the same things. There may be some things that are the same. A love of a parent for a child, I'm sure, is pretty universal. But there are things different than us. And God is saying that I'm not just for you, but I'm for everyone. And sometimes we want to throw God off the cliff because God doesn't do what we want God to do. Or people. We want to manipulate people so that they do what we want them to do. And if they don't, not throwing off a cliff per se, but out you go. We don't have any need for you anymore. You're not serving our purposes anymore. And yet God is there for us, for others. Is Jesus there for the rapist? Is Jesus there working with the sex offender? Is Jesus there working for the person who embezzles? Is Jesus there for the person who is a dictator who creates genocide in his or her country? Is Jesus there for the person in prison? Is Jesus there for the worst offender you can ever think of? Is Jesus there for them? Or is Jesus in our comfy couch watching the football game, holding our hand and eating popcorn with us? That's a deep question. Because if you believe the presence of God, yeah, Jesus is there, but Jesus is also out there, past our little safe boundaries. He's probably next to us on the TV going, you know what, you probably should go over there. It'd be a good idea if you went to wherever. They could really use your help. You've got the skills, you've got the talent, you've got the time, you've got the money. Why don't you just head over to whatever country or wherever that needs your help? Maybe it's Milwaukee or who knows. I can't do this. I don't want to do this alone. I've never done it alone. I've always asked people like Jeremiah, like Moses, those who felt so unworthy, And yes, I used them. I worked with them to promote the love and peace of God, the community of faith, the community of Christ. Even if they don't believe the same things you do. My love for them is the same as my love for you. Even if they don't believe in me, I still will be with them, to heal them, to be whatever it is. So the people get mad at Jesus because he is looking out past them. He is looking past the needs, present needs, to the needs outside. They may be great inside. They may be great outside. And yet Jesus has spent his time in his community, showing them the way, teaching them, healing them. It's time to move on. It's time to explore new cultures and new peoples and spread the word however they will understand it. A loving touch is universal. Healing is universal. Jesus makes his way with his 12 from town to town. Sometimes welcome, sometimes not. But anyway, he does it. And just because he gets kicked out of the synagogue doesn't mean he gets kicked out of his mission. He still has his mission. It's just out there now. It's out into the world. If we decided we have us and them, Jesus is over there. We've created our own little boundaries. And it makes it tough for Jesus to be with us. So I'm only human. That's the thing. We're comfortable with who we are and where we're at and what we do. And it's hard for us, like the people in Jesus' hometown, to accept the fact that Jesus will work with us, but he'll work with other people as well. But it's a freedom that we have to accept or reject that from Jesus. Accept the fact that he's out there in the world and sometimes nudging us to do the same so that we can be the hands and feet of Christ wherever we go and whatever we do. Amen.